For the next panel, I have to say, the most important ingredient of a startup are the founders, because without them, like, hey, there's nobody to take the leap and create these amazing ventures. The next panel, we're fortunate to have a group of individuals, the top American founders and CEOs, to share some of the learnings. Moderating the panel, we will have Fred Schonenberg. And I have to read you like his job description, because it sounds like one of the coolest jobs that I ever heard of. So Fred is the CEO of Venture Fuel, which helps large companies and governments innovate faster through startup collaboration. They run accelerators and pilot programs for everyone, from Coca-Cola to Dick's Sporting Goods to the state of California. His team looks at hundreds of startups every week, and Fred is an advisory board member to Angeles Investments from the very beginning. So, hey, Fred, welcome, and thank you so much.
And if the founders could come up and join me, we can dive right in. I'm going to make you introduce yourselves. So, thank you for the very kind introduction. One of the things we do at Venture Fuel is we're always looking for the best startups that can solve some sort of problem that is out there. We're really fortunate today. We have founders across 3 of the hottest areas in technology right now. We have Fintech, Medtech, and personal identification. I can't think of 3 that are more interesting. We're so excited to hear from each of you. And one of the things we do every time we talk to founders is say, what's your elevator pitch? You know, if you've only got a couple of seconds to talk to us. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot to introduce yourselves and give your elevator pitch. So Daniela, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to be in Latino events. It's not often that I've been in Latino events lately, because we just started going out into the world and it just hits differently. So when I heard J Balvin when I was walking in, I'm like, great, okay, welcome. I'm Daniela Corrente. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Real. And what we do is that we create very simple savings plans towards purchases so that people can buy what they want with their own money. No debt, no fees. Anything that you want, from a TV to a pair of shoes, we optimize your cash flow so you can achieve it with your own money and get rewards because of it.
Perfect. John, what about you?
Hi, I'm John Whaley. I'm founder and CEO of UnifyID. We do authentication, and we actually make authentication much more seamless and much more secure. So, and that includes things from going passwordless, like removing passwords, but also streamlining and enabling commerce. Like, for example, if you go to Lowe's.com and you want to apply for a Lowe's credit card, instead of having to fill out an entire form, like, we already know that it's you that is visiting, the website on your phone, and so we can just ask you one question, and after that, then we'll pre-fill in the rest of the application. And so that helps not only on the security side, but also on the conversion and user experience side. We're already being used by 9 of the top 10 U.S. banks. We've run on over 1 billion phones worldwide. And we're just getting started. I mean, identity is really the underpinning of so many other products and services, and so we're looking forward to that as well.
Great. And Carlos.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carlos Castro. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Leuko. We are a medical device startup that came out of MIT with an innovative technology, and we have developed the world's first medical device that can monitor white blood cells completely non-invasively. That means that we don't require a blood sample. You can think of our product like a portable microscope. We take videos through the skin of the finger for 1 minute, analyze it with proprietary AI, and we are able to make a measurement. So our first application is actually using this technology to monitor oncology patients. And with that, we are planning to change the lives of more than 2 million cancer patients, reduce their chemotherapy-related hospital readmissions by 50%, and save more than $6 billion to the healthcare system, including payers and insurers and payer-provided networks. We are raising a Series A at the moment, by the way. with the goal of getting the product approved by the FDA and getting to US commercial launch by the end of 2023. And, much like my other fellow founders, we are only getting started. And then after that initial product, we plan to grow to other therapeutic areas, including multiple sclerosis, immunocompromised patients, and emergency room visits. So pleasure to be here representing Latino founders, and excited to participate in this panel.
That's great. So one of the things, each of you are in extremely competitive and interesting areas. So I want to understand from your point of view what your special sauce is, right? Some people in the Valley call it the unique value proposition, but that thing that you do better than anyone else in the space, and why you're unique. So Carlos, can I start with you?
Yeah, so I guess that our secret sauce is really the technology. This is technology that came out of our research work at MIT. So really it's the first technology that can provide those white blood cell measurements without blood. And that really enables doing like home monitoring much more frequently than what is possible today. I mean, if you think of current technologies, you need to go back to the clinic to get a blood sample, and that limits how frequently these patients can access to care. Particularly in the case of immunocompromised patients, you also don't want to have them going back to the hospital back and forth. So really the fact that we are non-invasive, that's the, I guess, like the principal value proposition compared to existing solutions.
And John, what about you? I mean, I know that I thank you because passwords, I've forgotten them my entire life. So just there, I know you're already helping people. But what is the unique value proposition?
I think for us, it's really about the combination of the technology and the data. So we have a very highly technical team that has been working together for a while, and because we have such a large corpus of data now, like we've like I mentioned, run over 1 billion devices. This is mobile user behavior and human behavior data, and so we utilize that with machine learning to really understand about what makes people unique, and then use that for authentication. Like, for example, if we capture motion data from your phone when you're walking, we can actually authenticate you based on your unique gait, like based on the way that you walk, which is very unique to you, and it's the same accuracy as like a physical fingerprint. And so this was, again, like this is the backing of that is like a lot of deep technology, and combined with access to that type of data to be able to build the machine learning models to be able to distinguish between different people based on their behavior.
And Daniela, what about you?
Yeah, definitely our algorithm. And I'm sorry, we've been full on. We have launched in one of our largest partnerships in 10 days. So I've been full on non-talking to my product and engineering team for the past days, and my voice, it's here and there. But our algorithm, so with the way that we optimize cash flow towards purchases is based on spending patterns, however much you have on your bank account, the things that you are saving for where you are in your life. So that's a big differentiator for us, besides the fact that we're truly pioneering debt-free payment alternatives, because if any of you goes to check out right now, the two options that you have, it's either you have the money or it's a loan-driven alternative, but we're actually cash flow optimization towards purchases. So our data is only getting larger and richer as we are integrating with merchant partners and they offer these to their customers.
So each of you are successful founders. You're still on your journey up, but a lot of the founders watching online and that are here tonight are earlier stage than that. I was wondering if you could share maybe one piece of advice you have for a founder, something you learned along your journeys that you wish you knew when you were maybe at the seed stage. And John, I'll start with you.
I mean, I would say just be yourself. I guess there's many things where, I mean, there's many cases people believe that a founder, like you have to be good at everything, and that's not actually the case. I mean, you should actually focus on the things that you are really good at and world class at, and and people will react much better to you, like whether it's investors or people you're recruiting, those type of things, if you're just like very honest and authentic. And so if you're like a technology person, like don't try to pretend to be a business person because you believe that's what that people want to see, right? Just like be the best technology person you can be, because you will always supplement yourself with like other people who will like fill in these other gaps. And so that's the biggest mistake that I see people make, is that they say, oh well, I'm not like, this is the image of what a founder should be, and therefore, like, let me try to kind of fit that image. No, it's like, just try to be yourself.
Yeah, it's so smart. You're kind of embracing your superpower and then find other people that have different superpowers to build your team. And Daniela, what about you?
Yeah, building on that, I totally agree, but also focus on what you have and not on what you lack, right? One of the biggest things, obviously, I'm a Latina founder in fintech. There are not many of us. And every time you walk into a room, just focus on what you have to bring to the table, because it's always adding value, right? And the fact that some people understand and don't understand the story has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the knowledge that they have, with their background. And it's our job as founders to constantly evolve and evolve the story, understanding that we're constantly selling to the market. So embrace that and have fun as you do it. Always being yourself, as you said before.
Carlos?
Yeah, so for me, I guess that the advice would be having very early and very frequent conversations with your prospective customers. And, I think that's really important, that we are all trying to solve problems for our customers, and then you need to have that intimate relationship. And I think that I've met like some people that when they are working on innovative products, sometimes they are worried about like communicating their idea because they think they're, somebody else is gonna come and like rip it off. And I think that actually communicating the idea only makes it better. I think that ideas are cheap, but execution is really what matters. And it's awesome actually to kind of get your customers be part of your company. I mean, we often went to them saying like, if you would have a magic wand, how would you like it to be to solve the problem that you are facing on your day-to-day? And then it's fantastic because you can have your customers kind of designing the product for you. And I would like encourage having that type of interactions as frequently and as early as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting when you can get your customers to co-create with you, whether it's a product or something like that. They then take ownership of that. That's their idea now, so they're much more open to it.
Yeah, I actually have a funny story around that. One of our customer success members, our customer success lead, she was a customer. So she reached out and she was full on engaged with the product. And when we opened the job position, she applied. And that obviously gave her a huge advantage because, she was one of our evangelizers since the get-go.
Okay, I'm going to turn that question completely upside down. A lot of the people in this room and online are angel investors, and many are learning how to invest in companies, which companies to invest in, which ones to pass on. What advice would you have for the investment community when evaluating an early stage startup? So you walk into the room, John, how do they judge you versus your competitors? And if you were kind of to flip the script, what advice would you have for early stage investors?
So at the early stage especially, it's much less about the idea and it's really more about the team of people, because it's very likely that whoever it is, like whatever it is that they think they're doing, they're probably going to have to pivot. I mean, and change, because like the market has changed, or like the requirements change, competitor change. Like there's always, and that's really how startups compete. I mean, how do you compete as a small organization against like much larger, more well-funded organizations? It's that you can be much more agile and you can kind of see the opportunities quicker and adjust more quickly, right? And so this is why, like at the early stage especially, like I think investors can and do they're really looking at like you as a founder. Do I believe in this team? Like not so much like what this particular idea is, right? And then so that's the part where it becomes really really important to like understand, like as an investor, like what you know and you don't know. I mean, the truth is that like anyone that you would want to invest in, like they are going to be the experts in the space, right? Because they are devoting their life to it, right? And then you may feel like you have some kind of insights about that space, but the truth is like they are actually living this, right? And so you have to you find these people who are very kind of passionate and knowledgeable about something in space, and then you just be as supportive as you can be. And like don't so really great founders, they don't have to they don't have to get money from anywhere. I mean, they have options where to get money from. And so the ideal investors are ones that are very well aligned and also very supportive, right? And so that's really what you want to be. If you want to like if there's a tendency to kind of go and try to be an operator and like help, like, you know, oh, let me tell you how to run your business, those kind of things, like it doesn't usually end well. And so this is why, you know, find the kind of great teams and great people, you know, give them the resources they need, and then, you know, leave them alone until they need you again. Always be there and be supportive and be helpful, but you know, you don't need to kind of go in and like try to help them run their business for them.
Daniela, what about you?
You know, time is a non-renewable asset for investors and for us, for founders. I think one thing that people forget is that as CEOs and founders, when we start a company, big part of our job, it's obviously fundraise, but we're also doing 20,000 other things. So every hour that we spend with you is an hour that we're not spending building the business. And it's not a matter of being disrespectful, it's a matter of really learning. And it's something that it took me a little bit to understand when I was an early stage founder, and I see it, and it's something that I always tell founders when they are now starting. It's like, you know, if you've had a couple of calls and they're not writing you a check, let it go, keep moving, right? Because a lot of times investors don't tell you a no right away because they're waiting to see who else is coming, and you're spending a lot of times in a lot of calls just trying to sell and sell. And just be mindful of the time that you're taking away from the founders, because again, like it's cannibalizing into the time that we can invest towards growth.
And Carlos, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on the team as well. I think that's, you know, to me, if I were an early stage investor, that's probably the main thing that I would look at. And I would look particularly at their commitment, and particularly how they have like stick together through hard times. I would like make questions of how they like work together through disagreements. I think it's very important that the founders have like gumption. I mean, they're gonna go through highs and lows, and you need to make sure that they will continue pushing for the vision, despite everybody saying that, you know, no. So I think that's a really important feature for an early stage startup. That's something that I would definitely focus on. Obviously, all the other things have to be there in terms of, you know, they must have like an unfair advantage compared to other products, either through traction or through intellectual property. You have to look at the size of the opportunity, but I mean, nothing replaces the passion and the commitment of the founders. So that would be kind of one of my main criteria. Definitely, I would not look at like financial projections. I believe that nobody, at a very early stage, nobody really, I mean, everybody has like PowerPoint slides with like exponential growth. And I think that the only thing that everybody knows for sure is that won't be the case. I mean, those projections won't be accurate. So yeah, team for me as well.
I guess it's not unsurprising that if you ask 3 founders the most important thing in a startup, they say the founders is what it is. Sorry, Daniela, what were you going to say?
No, and on the founder side, because I know there are some founders out there too, one thing that has worked very nicely is that, you know, your investors, your cap table, they become part of your team. They're an amazing asset that not a lot of founders take advantage of, or you want to take advantage of them in certain times, right? You don't always want to pin the same people. So on my cap table, like next to whoever is on the cap table, I have written what they're very good at, because then whenever I need them, I'm going to pin them. And some of them I might have never pinned because I know that in the future is when they can unlock something. But the ones that are more early is the ones that I'm pinning now. Like, they become part of your team, and that's why they're so important. And just keeping that in mind on both ends.
Yeah, I always think as an angel, if you see a company that excites you, you believe in the founding team and the market opportunity, if you also believe you can help them in some unique way, that makes it a little bit more interesting, because you're going to unlock something for them as a founding team as much as your money will be something. I also would say on the cap tables and predictions, sort of looking out, at least it's better than it used to be. I remember when I started my first company in 1999, you could download a software and it would help you write like a 70-page business plan. And that's what you went out and pitched with. And like, I actually still have it, and I always go back and look, and I'm like nothing, like page 2, it was wrong from then on out. Like I still had the first line right though. One question I have for you, one of the things I think is really special about Ángeles is the community that is here today and online, and it builds. How important is that as you're thinking about it as founders, both in terms of where you came from, as we saw in the presentation before, but in terms of building something for your community? And Daniela, I know this is core to what you're doing, but just curious the importance of community as you build.
From a investor perspective or in general?
in general?
Look, 85% of our users are female and 67% are Latina and Black. And that has happened very organically, but it really tells you how we haven't been targeted in the right ways for financial products. So that's a very huge source of pride for me, because we didn't go into the market thinking like, we're going to target female because I'm a female founder. Not at all. I consider myself a CEO and a founder, right? And that's it. I don't like to put other titles on top of that. But seeing who was engaging with the product and seeing how they're engaging and how excited they get and how we can unlock better financial opportunities because of what we're putting out there, it's very important to me. And interestingly enough, from an investor perspective, to me has always been key to have a cap table that is diverse, because we talk about diversity in many angles. But the reality is that the more and the more that you raise, the less access to diverse capital you're going to have. So it's something that, on top of all of the other things that we have to have in mind as CEOs, it's also something that you have to define since the beginning, because that original cap table is going to dictate a lot of what the future of the company is going to be. So I find it to be a great opportunity for any type of founder to really take a look and define, these are the values of my company, and these values should be everywhere, from the cap table to the people that we hire, to how we talk and how we make people feel in this company. And that's something that's very core for everybody in my team.
John, what about you?
I mean, like having a strong community is really essential to your success. I mean, if you actually look, like, why is it that so many companies, like tech companies, are actually founded here in Silicon Valley, right? And it's about like the whole, like, the entire ecosystem that it's here, that like really that everything from like the, not just the investors and not just, but like the lawyers and like and the administrative people and everyone else around it, and but especially like kind of that founding community as well. So I think that those like that it's really very, very important to like have like kind of a strong community around you, and like, and because they will help out in so many different ways. And also, I mean, just echoing this on the side of kind of like just really thinking about like the diversity and kind of like the DNA of your company, like you really want to be careful to kind of also branch out and kind of like into other areas and other communities, like in terms of having a diversity at the board level, at the kind of early employee level, because that really, it forms the gene pool of your company, right? And you want to think, and the problem is if it's too much of a monoculture, like everybody is like exactly the same in those things, then you get all the negative aspects that you see, like when you have kind of an inbred kind of gene pool. It's like every trait gets accentuated, and you end up having these blind spots that end up killing you later on, right? And so this is to try to avoid like having these type of blind spots. This is the reason why people join, like have the vision of the organization. Like they all want to be able to be part of something that's bigger than themselves, like bigger than what they could build by themselves, right? And so like the promise of there is, if you're actually able to kind of bring together a really diverse team of with different backgrounds and perspectives, then ultimately you can build something that's better than any one individual can build. And that's the reason why we're all here and we all want to do this.
Carlos, what about you?
Yeah, so I would comment on maybe the role of communities like Angeles investors, that I think is really important. I myself, I mean, I guess as many people here, I'm like an immigrant entrepreneur. So I came to this country, I'm a first generation immigrant, but so I came to this country with, no connections, no network. And I think that the role of these communities in like kind of providing those connections to people that otherwise wouldn't is really important. And if you think of it, I think that's actually the unfair advantage for an investor group like Angeles investors, because you have to consider that talent is like randomly distributed among the population, and yet just a minority of them maybe have the connections to make something happen out of that talent. So there is an undertapped kind of market out there, and I think that communities like this one are really important to kind of unleash that talent and really make things happen. So that would be my comment on the importance of community.
Great. I don't know if we have time for questions. Oscar, how are we doing on time?
30 minutes.
How much, 30 minutes?
Yes.
We've got time then. G. I can translate it too if you want.
Yeah.
You talked about early on, there's a high probability that you're going to have to pivot. Maybe for each of you, did you have to do that? I mean, and also one other twist to it, did COVID create a reason to pivot? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. Like I think the core vision of the company like didn't fundamentally change, but our go-to-market changed completely. I mean, and this was based on, I think we were very naive at the beginning, and like we learned a lot like as you go through the process. We went from a kind of becoming being a consumer company to kind of going after enterprise, and like the go-to-market had completely changed. And like this was based on just kind of interactions and feedback. And absolutely, like so when COVID happened, so at the very beginning, like everything just stopped. Like all of our conversations we're having, they just stopped as people tried to figure out, okay, what are we doing here? I think in the long term, this is like dramatically accelerated our growth and everything. But there were some really difficult spots in there, like going through COVID, where it's like we're worried about like, oh, are we going to be able to survive this, right? I mean, we came out stronger on the other side because, I mean, ultimately there's kind of larger market forces that are happening. Well, suddenly people need to work remotely. Now they care a lot more about kind of remote authentication, like using their mobile devices, things like that. But like it took a while to like actually get there. And like in the meantime, a lot of these deals that we had were kind of start to falling apart or like got delayed. And so things became really tricky. I mean, we were very fortunate. We were able to get like a PPP loan in the middle and everything, so it helped the bridge quite a bit, and like we ended up kind of successful on the other side. But on the other side, like whenever one of these things happen, that also means that there's like big opportunity. And so you look at like the nature of work has changed, right? And so the smart players now, they're going to be identifying these type of new, like, what does this now enable, like that wasn't people were barely even talking about 3-4 years ago, now is the new norm. And so there's going to be a whole new set of winners, in this new world. And so, I think there's a lot of opportunities there that this opened up.
Carlos,
Yeah,
Daniela?
so many opportunities. Obviously, the market is very different now what it was 2 years ago. And in our case, because we are saving towards purchases, actually the fact that people are getting more constrained with their money and forcing them to be more creative on how they achieve their things would plays very nicely with our value proposition. We did start as a B2C and we have transitioned into B2B also because the market over the past 20 months, right? Buy now, pay later really went through the roof. Buy now, pay later has been out there for 17 years, but people think that has been out there for 2.5, right? And now people are realizing that, hey, it's a loan at the point of purchase, right? It's more debt. They're aggregating debt. They're actually people getting loans in order to pay their buy now, pay later loans, which is a crazy market, right? So for us to come in and tell them, hey, look, this is a payment alternative, it's something that has played very nicely with consumers. But on the other end, from the pivot perspective and evolution perspective, we started going after merchants and telling merchants like, look, you have 70% of people that comes to your website abandon shopping cart. How are you targeting them? We know that 48% of them are doing so because they are not ready to place the order today. And you might know that you want that TV in time for Memorial Weekend, but if you go to Target and you put it on your shopping cart and you abandon shopping cart, Target doesn't know when you're going to come back. Right? But we can actually convert these customers by giving them a simple way to put $5. As soon as they start putting the $5 every day and we automate that for them, you are going to have visibility into inventory predictability, right? We know that people don't return items at the same rate because it's an intentional purchase. So it's actually, we saw, again, opportunity. I think that's what makes us founders, right? Of being like, okay, this is happening. How do we evolve so that our vision and what we are building stays the same, but the avenue that we take to achieve it changes a little bit?
Carlos?
Yeah, so in our case, I think there was a lot of pivoting at the very beginning. We started from a perspective of let's identify a really important clinical problem and a medical need, and then develop a solution that would be well positioned to solve that problem. So during that kind of ideation phase, that was like very divergent, and we went through multiple iterations, like kind of trying to identify a problem that would be meaningful enough and a technology that would be well positioned for that. So there was definitely a lot of iteration in those early days. And we conducted a lot of customer interviews to, guide that process. But I guess that once we found that kind of product market fit, same as you were mentioning before, I think that has remained like relatively stable in our company in terms of our use case. Our go-to-market has also changed quite a bit. We had mostly also kind of a scientific background, and I think that was a reflection of maybe the growth of the company. We were talking here about like diversity. So as like investors were coming in with experience in the space, and the team was growing with people with different backgrounds. I think that our perspective of how to do sales and access the market access really changed. I think we were a little bit naive initially on how to access the healthcare market and how to navigate the US healthcare system. I guess initially we had the perspective of, if you do something that is good for patients, obviously the market will adopt it. And, obviously that's not the case. So you always need to have like kind of all the different stakeholders in mind. And unfortunately, if you have a solution that is going to improve the clinical outcomes for patients, but it's not going to provide like extra revenue to the providers, that won't be adopted. And that's something I guess we took into account as we were iterating. Regarding the impact for COVID, I guess that we had the temptation at some point, because I think a lot of people like stop working on whatever they're working on. It's like, we are a medical device startup, and people were like, maybe you should try to apply your technology for diagnosing COVID. But I think that we stayed stable. I think we believe we continued with our mission. The unmet need that we had validated didn't go away because COVID happened. So we decided to stay the course. And to a certain degree, COVID has accelerated as well the need, or has highlighted the need of our product. Obviously, there has been a much higher adoption of remote patient monitoring, telehealth. It has been highlighted also how important it is to keep immunocompromised patients away from potentially like catching an infection. So all of those are trends that are working in our favor. We had a story actually that also happened during COVID that was like quite positive. So we had a pharmaceutical company that was producing a particular drug that actually produced immunosuppression in their patients. And the physicians, they basically stopped prescribing that drug during the pandemic because they were worried about, immunosuppression, I guess, lowering the immune system of their patients during COVID. So they contacted us because they thought that, pairing our device and having a companion diagnostic to that drug, so that you can make sure that the patients are taking the drug safely, that would provide like peace of mind so that the oncologists or the physicians could continue to prescribe that drug. So that's a very exciting partnership opportunity. Those conversations are ongoing at the moment and wouldn't have happened without COVID. So, definitely a lot of opportunities as a consequence of that.
It's interesting, even thinking about our company, Venture Fuel, in 2014, I started it with the idea that we would find great founders and then help them work with big companies. So we worked for the founders. And then about halfway through our journey, we had a Miller Coors, one of the large brewers, said, have you ever thought about flipping your model and working for the large companies? Because we need help with X, Y, Z. And to the earlier conversation about co-creating, I said, sure, let's talk about it and think about it. And we co-created what is now Venture Fuel's business model. And we were doing well until that happened. And then it's sort of been very exponential growth for us. But I think one of the things with founders, it's about listening to your customers and then seeing that opportunity, to the agility that you mentioned. That's the strength of startups, is that you see that moment of like, oh, wait a second, that is open field. There's a need, let's go. That a large company just can't move the battleship fast enough to get there. So it's very cool. Are there other questions? Is there anything from online at all that's coming in, or does anyone here have anything? Just got one right here.
There was an earlier comment talking about how for early stage founders, the time you spend with investors is time you're not spending with your product. and how that can deter some growth. For early stage investors, what are the tips for how they can be the most helpful so that they're not taking away time from you, but they can be supporting you and helping you build that community so you can focus on growth?
It's a great question. Who would like to go first?
Well, I think it's similar maybe of how you think about like managing teams. You don't want to be micromanaging your team, and you want to give them freedom to accomplish and do what they are like good at doing. So I definitely agree with that. I mean, it can go both ways because I mean, obviously, sometimes like interactions with investors can provide a lot of value for us founders, which I guess that was also part of the point. So I mean, I think a model that works well is maybe let the founders also drive that process to a certain degree, and obviously, I think your method is really awesome in the sense that you have like kind of areas of expertise of your investors. You can reach out to them when you have a problem regarding those areas. So maybe having the pool coming from the founders would be, I mean, at that point, you make sure that the founders need something from you and you are definitely creating value for them. I mean, if they go like completely, silent on you for a number of time, I think it's okay also to check in from time to time. But maybe having the founders driving that process, that may be a good recommendation.
Yeah, and transparency, right? I do think like spending time with investors adds a lot of value. I was talking more on the pitching process, right? I think investors know exactly how much they're willing to invest and they know if they're going to invest or not. So that's what I meant with being mindful, right? I've had great conversations with investors where they've said, especially when we were at early stage, where it's like, hey, we really like these, but we'd really like to come in when you have a lead, right? This is how much we can allocate. Let's keep talking once you have it. Great, because I've had other people that takes them 4 conversations in order to say that, right? So being very clear, transparent. I now have learned, and this is for every founder out there, that part of my questions whenever because it's a 2-end interview, as I said, right? We're becoming a team. So one of the things that you want to know is their dry power, right? Are you really deploying capital, or this is more a conversation for you in the future? Because if it's a conversation for you in the future, fantastic, we can have it. But then I know that, I'm not going to be on top of you for a second or third meeting. So I think transparency, it's very important. And having that transparency since the get-go really makes a difference in the relationship. Because if you really want an investor and perhaps it's not the right time, as a founder, you're going to make it work because you know that you want those people as part of your team, right? And the other way around, but that only comes when there is openness. So be clear on the size of the check, the availability for you to deploy capital, all of those things, not having it as a taboo, but actually using it as leverage. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo and add on top of that, like, I mean, so first is like expediency, like in terms of like, you can make a decision, make it quickly, like don't string us along for a long period of time, and also like don't be afraid to kind of say, oh, no or not now. There's something. I mean, many times like you when you talk to an investor, like you rarely hear no. I mean, because they don't. It's like they'll ghost you for a while, or like it'll be hard to like. Schedule a meeting or something, and then like you're not really sure. It's like, I mean, actually, as a founder, you appreciate the fact that they say, okay, yeah, this is not for me right now, and here's why. I mean, like, and very, 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 very few investors are willing to kind of do that and kind of put that on the record because they don't want to like a record of like I was wrong about this company. And guess what? I mean, if you're an investor, I mean, you're talking to hundreds of companies. You can maybe 1 out of 100 you can actually make that bet on. Guess what? Like some of them, like you're going to miss some. I mean, that's just the way that that's the way that it is. It doesn't like reflect badly on you if you happen to miss something. But if you can, if like being kind of honest and open around these things, and also thinking about like what can you bring to the table? What is unique about you? Like would it be about the introductions you can make to potential customers, to partners, help you with recruiting, whatever it is, and then just like think about that, like what you can offer to the founders, because I think many times like the most successful relationships in terms of kind of between a founder and an investor is that people who are kind of generally helpful even in the places where I'm not like going and asking you for money, right? And then those relationships exist, and then oh, this person was like super helpful, even though they're not an investor yet, but like we're not even raising money, but and these are the ways I know that can help them. And then guess what? Like you'll be one of the first people that we talk to, and know that the fact that like we are going to raise money, and you can be part of it. So.
I will add maybe one more point that I think has worked out well for us. In the spirit of transparency, I think that we are quite transparent of like communicating to our investors kind of where we are, the problems we're having. I mean, we send this like quarterly newsletter, and that has been great for us. I mean, we obviously talk about like our success and like the good stuff that we are doing, but also we have a section of like this is where we are struggling, or these are the items that we need help with. And that provides an opportunity to the investors to say, oh, actually, I know about this, so I have an intro here for them to step in. So I think that has worked out quite well to create that. So I think that for the investors, maybe it's also important to nurture that environment of trust. I mean, you want your founders to be able to feel comfortable being honest with you and telling you like not only about the good things, but also like the bad and ugly things. So I guess like showing an spirit that you are there, like willing to help through even the tough times is very important, and probably helps with that transparency in both directions. And I guess that would be maybe another tip.
And one thing I would add on to that, I was going to say before you said that I think the best founders send out quarterly or a monthly update to their investors. These are successes. This is what we're doing. And there's always like a, how can you help? Yeah. Right at the bottom. I think what's interesting is to think about that as angel investors early on. You could kind of do that to your investments, right? So we've made some pretty interesting investments from Angeles, and I've reached out to the founder on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm part of the Angeles group. By the way, these are the 3 ways I think I might be able to help you. If you're interested, here's my email. If not, you're busy running your company. I don't need the ego stroke, but I'm happy to do it. So I think part of it is we've seen a couple of cases where a company maybe hasn't done as well, and they're like, oh, I was struggling meeting with CPG founders, and you're like, oh, I know all these CPG founders. I could have helped, but they didn't know that about me or whoever it might be. So I think as an early stage investor, especially, it can be very helpful to a founder to say, hey, by the way, I have these resources if you should want them.
Yeah, and just, I mean, one more piece on that. Like, I think the best organizations around this, they actually encourage kind of founder to founder relationships as well, like kind of within their portfolio. And so it's not just kind of like a hub and spoke model, like you are talking to the investors, and because that's one of the most powerful communities is basically, I mean, founders are kind of like, who either have co-investors or talk to each other, or, go on panels like this and things like that. You kind of establish these type of relationships, and then that becomes really useful, in the future. So like in any of your ability to kind of encourage those type of that type of community to develop, becomes really powerful. Because that's the other thing. If you're looking for it's like, okay, what are the other good companies to invest in? Like actually, many founders, they know the ones that are doing well, or that like this founder is definitely successful, or this company is doing well, and so that can also be a really great source for sourcing deals as well.
The community angle is huge amongst founders, and I think it was very important. You were asking about COVID, right? I think that was fantastic. As soon as COVID hit, at least I experienced, and I'm sure you did too, these whole communities of founders that we would get together and just really chat and brainstorm, because everybody was figuring out, okay, how do we evolve? How do we do this? Who do you know in this space? And honestly makes such a huge difference, because we all know, even though we're in 3 sectors that are totally different, there are many things that are very similar, right? We're all building team. We are all at some point fundraising. We are all like, there are many challenges that all investors, all founders face, and having that community and talking to others and brainstorming and being like, hey, perhaps I already did that, or I recommend this bank over this one because X, Y, and Z, or ask for this person. It just such as an accelerator for growth that it's very important when you see that. And I've never seen it as strong as when COVID started.
That's a great point. So one of the things, all of us reading the news, it's been a kind of tumultuous few weeks on the economy side of it. A question I have for you as founders, right? You can't control the macroeconomics from your seat. how do you message to your teams, right? They're on Twitter and they're seeing these unicorns laying off a lot of people, that's maybe a good market correction in some cases. How do you think about that when you talk to your team about, hey, like, our opportunity is still here and in front of us? Curious how you're approaching the sort of macroeconomic climate as CEOs of your companies. Big question, curveball.
You mean from the team perspective particularly?
I'm just thinking about it as a founder, right? There's disruption in the ether here, right? And so how do you think about it when you're trying to lead your troops?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the troops that join a startup, they know that is, they are in for a bumpy ride to start with. So, I mean, maybe creating a culture where you make sure that everybody's aligned, everybody that joins the company knows that, obviously a startup is a high risk, high gain, very uncertain environment, including macroeconomics and many other factors. So I think that, I mean, one thing that for us works out quite well is also, I mean, we did a lot of work at the beginning, again, validating kind of the unmet need and the kind of the size of the problem. And even though, microeconomics may change, pandemics may come and go, but the problem is still there and it's not solved, so that remains constant. So there is a kind of a market opportunity and unsolved problem for our product. So I think that maybe that's one thing to keep people motivated. I mean, obviously, then we always send the message that we have supportive investors that are willing to go through the good and the bad times. So that's also very important. And I guess that but most of the people that at least join our team, I don't think they do it thinking that they will have a stable job and that they won't be laid off, right? So they do it for the mission mostly. Well, for the mission and for the opportunity of growth, because obviously in a startup you are exposed to maybe 7 different roles and you have responsibilities that it would be very hard for you to get in a larger company. So I think that maybe that's something that needs to be addressed at the recruitment process, making sure that you find people that aligns with that culture and those values and that have the right motivation to join the team.
I think it also depends on the role, right? Because we're generalizing that everybody that joins startup knows exactly what they're getting in. I think people that are more senior or in higher roles, they understand better versus people that are more junior, right? Because obviously over the past years, being in a startup has become the hot thing. So a lot of people join for the wrong reasons, and that comes part of the interview process, right? Highlighting and understanding what's going to motivate the person that you're bringing in. Because if it's somebody that cash is the only thing that motivates them, early stage startup is not the right thing. But if they are motivated by growth, if they are motivated by equity by growing, but all of those things we can provide. So going back to the theme of transparency, I think being very transparent with your team, but understanding that they are not the founders, so the level of risk that they are taking will never be the level of risk that we are taking, right? So you have to be transparent but mindful on how they're going to perceive it on the other end. On my case, we've worked with an amazing business coach since the beginning. It was one of the things that we included and investors suggested it, and I'm so happy with it, because not only for leadership team but for everybody on the team when COVID started, it's making sure that we provided that support, so that there were so many things that were happening in their personal life besides what they're seeing in the market, right? So making sure that you provide an ecosystem when they feel that they're supported, I think that inspires them. And even though we're remote, I see my team on video every morning at 8 a.m. And so we see each other's faces, we talk, we know what everybody's doing, and that keeps them excited versus just being silent, right? Having that attitude of hey, these are all the things that are opening, this is what's working, this is what's not, but this is how we're going to solve it. Celebrating them. I think sometimes we forget to celebrate them constantly, and people love that, right? Even in the smaller things. I have somebody on my team that loves Red Bull for some reason. And so, and when we were in the office, right, I started buying Red Bull, and for that person, that was the most amazing thing that anybody had done for them. So it really makes you think, I'm really? That's all I needed to do? Go buy Red Bull? And you're going to be so excited. But, it's the fact that they are feeling that they are in an environment that listens to them and it's propelling their growth in different ways, just personally has kept my team very motivated. Yeah.
The Red Bull cap table.
Sponsorship opportunity out there.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, my approach on this is, I mean, in general, to err on the side of like honesty and openness around. I mean, when there's challenges, like especially in the early stage companies, because I mean, they're, I mean, the people, they want to feel like they're part of something, right? And then you know that that you're all in it together, right? And like the best way to do that is like not to pretend like nothing is happening, like when things are not going well, right? Or there's macroeconomic forces that are happening, or you lose a big customer, whatever it is, right? And to just, you know, like to treat your team like with enough respect that like, okay, I respect you enough that I'm gonna like share this information with you, you know, and kind of just, so in general, Aaron, like, I mean, this, you don't have to be, you know, like radically, completely transparent about everything, but you know, just in terms of like the way that you, you treat and deal with the team, and you know, on the other side is that, this is like a unique time of, you know, of opportunity. And you look back at like 2008 and 2009, if you look back, so many great companies were founded like during that time where it was, you know, a terrible financial crisis. And like, guess what? That was the time, like it was like a changing of the guard, right? And the same kind of thing is happening now. And so like, there's a real opportunity. And this is another kind of lesson, you know, that kind of learned as a founder, is that like everyone in the company, like will key off of your like energy and your attitude, right? And so if you come in and you are just feeling a little bit down, or kind of like not, like people pick up on that so quickly, and it has like such a huge impact, just like multiplies across the whole company. So like, I mean, part of the role of the founder is to actually, you know, be honest, but also be bullish and be upbeat and all of these type of things, because like it's going to have this multiplicative effect across the entire organization.
And that doesn't mean always going into the meeting smiling, right? But it means like the way that you excite them and incentivize them. And even if in down moments, right, or something didn't pan out, it's coming in and being like, well, this is how we're going to approach it, right? And this is how we're going to go about it. And this is all of those things really inspire them to always have a mentality of, we can do this, we are going to do this is our goal, and we're going to achieve it. And we see that like the companies that where you see that there is mass exodus because salaries had to be cut, it's because I think leadership has a huge role on that, right? Like I think everybody, when COVID started, like I had to sit down my team and be like, hey, look, we have to optimize cash flow, and you know, we need to look at salaries. And there is like nobody on my team that was like, no. They were like, okay, this is what I need. We are going to figure this out. We are going to do this. We full on believe that you are going to get us through. And that is huge, right? And that's what you build day over day with the team that you are seeing.
And I just want to say that I think it is that belief, right? It's your mission statement. It's the reason people get on board. And that's the reason why investors should believe in the founders. And that's why you look for the right founders that can do it. Carlos, Daniela, John, thank you so much on behalf of everyone here and online for sharing all your wisdom with us.
Thank you.